The gunshot that killed Caroline Lawson echoed through Colton's dreams every night, and each time he woke, reaching for a woman who was no longer there. The empty pillow beside him held the faint scent of lavender from 2 months ago, growing fainter with each sunrise, and he wondered if losing that last trace of her might finally break what remained of his heart. It was September 1883 in Tascosa, Texas, a cattle town clinging to the edge of the Canadian River where cowhands and ranchers made their livings driving herds north along the trails. The town had seen its share of violence, but nothing prepared Colton for the random cruelty that took his wife. She had been walking home from the general store with flour and sugar for baking, humming one of her favorite hymns, when 2 drifters started shooting up Main Street in a drunken rage. One stray bullet found her heart. She died before he could reach her, collapsing in the dusty street with groceries scattered around her like fallen snow. The sheriff caught the men 3 days later, and they hanged within the week, but justice did nothing to fill the void Caroline left behind. Colton went through the motions of living because he did not know what else to do. He rose before dawn to tend the small ranch he and Caroline had built together over 5 years of marriage. He fed the horses, mended fences, rode out to check on the cattle they ran on leased grazing land. He came home to a cold house and ate meals that tasted like ash. He fell into bed exhausted and dreamed of gunshots. The neighbors tried to help at first. They brought covered dishes and kind words, but Colton could not bear their pity. He thanked them tersely and closed his door. He stopped going to church on Sundays, unable to sit in the pew where Caroline used to hold his hand during prayers. He avoided town except when absolutely necessary. He spoke to no one unless required for business. The other ranchers started calling him the ghost of Lawson Ranch, a man whose body still moved, but whose spirit had died in that dusty street. The worst part, the part that ate at him like acid, was knowing he should have been there. He should have walked with her to town that morning. She had asked him to come along, but he said he had too much work fixing the barn roof. If he had just set down his hammer and gone with her, he could have steered her away when the shooting started. He could have shielded her with his body. He could have done something, anything, other than what he did, which was to arrive too late and hold her while the light faded from her eyes. His nearest neighbor was a widow named Olivia Harper, who lived a quarter-mile down the road with her young son. Colton barely knew her, though Caroline had been friendly with the woman. Olivia's husband had died the previous year in a riding accident, thrown from a spooked horse that dragged him half a mile before trampling him. Caroline used to visit Olivia regularly, bringing preserves and helping with heavier chores, and she had spoken often of the widow's quiet strength in the face of her loss. After Caroline's death, Olivia had been among those who brought food, but unlike the others, she did not offer platitudes or prayers. She simply left a pot of stew on his porch with a note that said she understood, and if he needed anything, she was close by. Colton never took her up on the offer. He told himself he needed no one's understanding or help. He would work until exhaustion claimed him, and maybe eventually the guilt would fade, though he doubted it. Caroline's death was his fault for not being there, and he would carry that burden until his own death, which sometimes seemed like a mercy too far away. October brought cooler winds across the Texas plains, and with them came troubles Colton could not ignore. A section of his fence line went down in a storm, and half his cattle wandered onto neighboring property. He spent 3 days rounding them up, working dawn to dusk with little food and less sleep. On the 4th day, riding back toward his ranch in the fading light, he realized he had not eaten a proper meal in nearly a week. The world tilted sideways, and he grabbed for the saddle horn, but his fingers would not grip. He felt himself sliding, falling, and then nothing. He woke to lamplight and soft voices. His head throbbed and his stomach cramped with hunger. He tried to sit up, and a gentle hand pressed him back down. "Easy now. You took a hard fall." The voice was feminine and familiar, though it took his foggy mind a moment to place it. Olivia Harper. He blinked, and her face came into focus, framed by dark auburn hair, pinned back in a simple style. She had green eyes that held a deep sadness he recognized, like looking into a mirror. "Your horse wandered onto my property with you unconscious in the saddle," she said. "My son helped me get you inside. You have been out for several hours." Colton looked around and realized he was in her home, lying on a sofa in a modest but tidy parlor. The smell of cooking food made his stomach growl audibly. "I need to get back," he said, though his body felt like lead. "You need to eat and rest," Olivia replied firmly. "Your animals are fine for one night. I sent my son over to feed your horses and make sure everything was secured. He is a responsible boy, 11 years old and capable. You should not have troubled yourself. It was no trouble. You would have done the same. Would he? Colton was not sure anymore. He had been so wrapped in his own grief that he barely remembered what it meant to be neighborly, to be human. He started to protest again, but Olivia disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a bowl of soup and fresh bread. The aroma made his head swim. "Eat," she commanded, and there was steel beneath the gentleness. He ate because his body demanded it, and because some distant part of him remembered Caroline's voice telling him not to be stubborn. The soup was rich with vegetables and beef, and the bread was still warm. He finished the bowl, and Olivia brought him another without asking. He ate that too, slower this time, and felt strength seeping back into his limbs. "Thank you," he managed. "You are welcome." A boy appeared in the doorway, watching him with curious brown eyes. He had his mother's auburn hair and a dusting of freckles across his nose. "Is he going to be all right, Ma?" the boy asked. "He will be fine, Owen. Say hello to Mr. Lawson." "Hello, sir. I made sure your horses had water and hay. The bay mare seemed especially hungry." "I appreciate that," Colton said. The words felt rusty, as if he had forgotten how to accept kindness. Owen nodded seriously and disappeared back down the hallway. Olivia settled into a chair across from Colton, her hands folded in her lap. "You cannot go on like this," she said quietly. "Starving yourself, working until you collapse. Whatever you think you deserve, this is not the answer. You do not know what I deserve. I know you are hurting. I know you think it was your fault. I know you replay that day over and over, wondering what you could have changed." Her voice was soft but steady. "I did the same after Thomas died. I went over every detail. I should have noticed his horse was skittish that morning. I should have asked him to stay home. I should have been a better wife so he would not have been distracted thinking about our argument from the night before. I blame myself for months." Colton met her eyes and saw the truth there, the same raw pain he carried. "How did you stop?" he asked. "I did not stop exactly. The pain is still there. But I realized that Thomas would not want me to destroy myself with guilt. He loved me, and I loved him, and love means wanting the other person to live fully, even after you are gone. I have a son who needs me. I have a life that still holds purpose, even if it looks different than I planned. Some days are harder than others, but I get through them." "Caroline would say the same," Colton admitted. "She was always the strong one. You loved her deeply, that is clear. But love is not measured by how completely you fall apart when it is gone. It is measured by how you honor what you had, by continuing to live the kind of life that would make her proud." The words hit harder than Colton expected. He looked away, blinking against the sudden burning in his eyes. "I do not know if I can." "You can, not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. And you do not have to do it alone." Olivia stood and moved toward the kitchen. "You will sleep here tonight. Tomorrow you can go home, but only if you promise to take better care of yourself. Eat proper meals, rest when your body needs it, and if you find yourself sinking too deep into the darkness, come talk to me. I understand that pain all too well." Colton wanted to argue, but exhaustion pulled at him, and the sofa was comfortable, and for the first time in 2 months, he felt something other than crushing guilt. He felt a tiny spark of something that might, with time and effort, become hope. "All right," he said. That night, he slept without dreaming of gunshots. The next morning, Colton woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. Dawn light filtered through lace curtains, and for a disoriented moment, he forgot where he was. Then memory returned, and he sat up, running a hand through his dark hair. His body ached, but the dizzy weakness from yesterday had passed. Olivia appeared with a cup of coffee, black and strong, the way cowboys took it. "Good morning. There is breakfast if you want it, then I will walk you back to your place." "You do not need to do that." "I want to. Besides, I should check that Owen did everything properly last night. He is a good boy, but still learning." They ate together at a small wooden table, Owen chattering about a hawk he saw hunting field mice, and Olivia occasionally interjecting with gentle corrections to his table manners. It was such a normal domestic scene that Colton felt like an intruder, but also strangely comforted. He had forgotten what it felt like to share breakfast with other people, to be part of casual human interaction. After the meal, Olivia and Owen walked with him back to his ranch. The morning was cool and clear, the sky endless blue above the rolling plains. Owen ran ahead, pointing out animal tracks and interesting rocks, while Olivia walked beside Colton in comfortable silence. When they reached his property, Colton saw that Owen had indeed done good work. The horses were content, the barn was secure, and even the chickens had been fed. "You raised him well," Colton said. "Thank you. He is the reason I kept going after Thomas died. Children have a way of pulling you back to life, whether you want to come or not. Caroline and I always meant to have children. We were waiting until the ranch was more established, until we had saved more money. I thought we had time." His voice cracked on the last word. Olivia touched his arm briefly, a gesture of understanding rather than pity. "Time is never guaranteed. We do the best we can with what we have." Owen came running back, breathless and grinning. "Ma, can I show Mr. Lawson the litter of kittens in our barn? They are getting big enough to leave their mother." "Another time, perhaps," Olivia said. "Mr. Lawson has work to do today." "Actually," Colton heard himself say, "I could use a good mouser in my barn, if you have one to spare." Owen's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? We have 6, and Ma says that is too many. There is a little orange one that is really brave. Come see." Olivia raised an eyebrow at Colton, a question in her expression. He shrugged, surprising himself with something that almost felt like a smile. "A cat is practical," he said. "Of course it is." They walked back to the Harper property, Owen leading the way with boundless energy. The widow's ranch was smaller than Colton's, but well maintained, with a neat house painted white and a barn that looked sturdy. Owen disappeared inside the barn and emerged carrying a tiny orange kitten with white paws. "This is the one I think you should take. He's not afraid of anything, and he already knows how to catch mice. I saw him get one last week." The kitten mewed and tried to climb up Owen's shirt. Colton reached out and took the small creature, feeling its rapid heartbeat against his palm. It looked up at him with blue eyes and mewed again. "What is his name?" Colton asked. "He doesn't have one yet. Ma said we should not name them all because we have to give most of them away." "Then I will call him Rusty, for his color." Owen beamed. "That is a perfect name." Colton tucked the kitten inside his jacket, where it immediately curled up and began purring. The warm vibration against his chest felt oddly soothing. "Thank you for everything," he said to Olivia. "I mean that." "You are welcome. Remember what I said. You do not have to face everything alone." He nodded and headed home, the kitten sleeping soundly against his heart. It was a small thing, bringing a barn cat home, but it was the first decision he had made in 2 months that looked toward the future instead of dwelling in the past. Caroline would have loved the little orange kitten. She would have fussed over it and probably let it sleep in the house, despite Colton's protests. The thought brought pain, but also a warmth of memory that felt less like a knife wound and more like an old scar learning to heal. Over the following weeks, Colton slowly emerged from his isolation. He still worked long hours on the ranch, but he made sure to eat properly and rest when needed. He found himself thinking about his conversation with Olivia at odd moments during the day. Her words about honoring love by living well instead of destroying himself with guilt repeated in his mind like a prayer. The kitten, Rusty, proved to be an excellent mouser and also surprisingly good company. The little cat followed Colton around the property, riding on his shoulder while he did chores and sleeping curled up on his lap in the evenings. It was easier to face the empty house with a living creature there, something that depended on him and gave affection freely. One morning in late October, Colton woke to find his main water pump had broken. He spent an hour trying to fix it before admitting he needed parts from town. The thought of riding into Tascosa made his stomach clench, but he could not run a ranch without water. He saddled his bay mare and made the ride, keeping his hat low and his eyes forward. The town bustled with weekday activity. Freight wagons rolled down Main Street. Cowboys lounged outside the saloons even at mid-morning, and women in calico dresses moved between the shops with baskets over their arms. Colton tried not to look at the spot where Caroline had fallen, but his eyes were drawn there anyway. Someone had swept the street clean. Life moved on whether he wanted it to or not. He tied his horse outside the general store and went inside. The proprietor, a balding man named Samuel, who had known Caroline well, greeted him with cautious warmth. "Colton, good to see you. What can I do for you today?" "Need parts for a water pump. The main seal broke and I think the valve needs replacing." Samuel nodded and moved behind the counter, pulling out a catalog. While he looked up the parts, Colton let his gaze wander the store. It looked the same as it always had, shelves stocked with everything from flour to harnesses. the smell of tobacco and coffee mingling in the air. Caroline used to love browsing here, especially the fabric section where she would plan dresses she wanted to make. "I can order these parts from Fort Worth," Samuel said. "They should arrive within 2 weeks. That long?" "Afraid so. These are specialty items, not standard stock." Colton sighed. "All right, order them." "How have you been doing, Colton? We have not seen much of you lately." "I am managing." Samuel hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Caroline was a fine woman. We all miss her, but she would want you to keep living, son." "So I have been told." Colton paid for the order and turned to leave. "Colton," Samuel called after him, "there is a barn dance next month for the harvest. Nothing fancy, just folks celebrating the season. You should come." "I do not think so." "Well, the invitation stands if you change your mind." Colton left the store and stood on the boardwalk, gathering himself. Across the street, he saw the church where he and Caroline had married, its white steeple pointing toward heaven. He remembered her in her wedding dress, second-hand but beautiful, her smile bright enough to light the world. He remembered the promises they made, the hope they shared, the future they planned. The grief rose up and threatened to swallow him, but then he felt a hand on his arm. He turned to find Olivia standing beside him, a shopping basket over one arm and concern in her eyes. "Colton, are you all right?" "I am fine, just needed parts from the store." She looked at him with an expression that said she saw right through the lie, but she did not push. "Owen and I are about to have lunch at the restaurant. Would you join us? Nothing fancy, just soup and sandwiches. I should get back to the ranch." "When was the last time you ate a meal you did not cook yourself?" He could not remember. "This morning." "I meant a good meal. Come on, my treat. You can tell me how Rusty is working out." Before he could formulate another excuse, Owen appeared from the direction of the schoolhouse, his face lighting up when he saw Colton. "Mr. Lawson, did you come to town to see us?" "Just picking up supplies." "Are you coming to lunch with us? Ma said we could go to the restaurant today because I got all my arithmetic correct this week." The boy's enthusiasm was hard to resist. Colton found himself nodding before he quite decided to. "I suppose I could eat something." The restaurant was a modest establishment run by a Mexican family who served excellent food. They settled at a table by the window and ordered. Owen kept up a steady stream of conversation about school, his friends, and a wild turkey he was trying to tame near their property. Olivia listened with patient amusement, occasionally meeting Colton's eyes with a look that said she knew her son was talking enough for 3 people, but she loved him for it anyway. The food arrived, and they ate. It was the first time since Caroline's death that Colton had shared a meal in public, and he felt exposed, as if everyone was watching and judging. But when he glanced around, he saw that people were absorbed in their own conversations, their own lives. The world had kept turning, despite his tragedy. "Owen, finish your milk," Olivia said gently. The boy made a face but obeyed. "Can I go see if the mercantile got any new penny candies?" "May I go?" Olivia corrected. "And yes, but only look. We are not buying candy today." Owen darted off, and Olivia shook her head fondly. "He has so much energy. I was never that energetic, even as a child. He is a good kid. You are doing a fine job raising him alone." "Thank you. There are hard days. Days when I wonder if I am enough, if he needs a father figure to look up to. Thomas was so good with him." Her voice held sadness, but not the crushing weight it once had. "How long were you married?" 12 years. We married young, had Owen right away. Thomas was a good man, steady and kind. Not perfect, we had our disagreements, but he loved us fiercely." She paused, stirring her coffee. "I imagine you and Caroline had a strong marriage too." 5 years, best 5 years of my life. We met at a church social in Dallas. I was working on a ranch there, saving money to buy my own land someday. She was a teacher at the local school. I saw her across the room and just knew somehow that she was going to change my life. And she did. In every way. She believed in me when I had doubts. She moved out here to the middle of nowhere without complaint, worked as hard as any ranch hand to build our place. She made that house a home. Colton stared into his own coffee cup, watching the steam rise. "I failed her." "No," Olivia said firmly. "You did not fail her. What happened was random violence. A terrible accident. You could not have prevented it unless you had a crystal ball showing the future. I could have been with her, and you both might have died. Or you might have died and she survived, and then she would be sitting where you are now, blaming herself for not stopping you from going to town that day. Guilt is a circle with no end, Colton. Eventually you have to step out of it. How did you step out of yours? She was quiet for a moment, choosing her words. I started focusing on what I still had instead of what I lost. I have Owen, my health, a roof over my head. I have neighbors and friends. I have mornings when the sunrise is beautiful and evenings when the stars take my breath away. Thomas's death did not erase all the good things in the world, even though some days it felt that way. I decided that surviving was not enough. I wanted to live again, really live, the way Thomas and I planned. Not the same life we would have had together, but a good life nonetheless. That takes courage. It takes stubbornness, Olivia corrected with a slight smile. And help from others. People were kind to me after Thomas died. They brought food and checked on us and made sure we did not fall completely apart. I am trying to pass that kindness forward now. Is that why you helped me? Kindness? Partly, but also because I know what that darkness feels like, and I could not stand by and watch you sink into it. She met his eyes directly. You are a good man dealing with an unbearable loss. You deserve support and compassion, not isolation. Colton felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of the tight bands that had constricted his breathing for 2 months. Thank you, Olivia, for everything. You are welcome. Owen returned then, bouncing with excitement about a new shipment of toys at the mercantile, and the moment passed. But something had changed between Colton and Olivia, a deepening of understanding and connection that went beyond neighborly concern. Over the following weeks, Colton found himself spending more time with Olivia and Owen. It started small, helping her fix a broken wagon wheel or chopping wood for her winter stores. She reciprocated by inviting him for supper occasionally, meals that were far better than his own attempts at cooking. Owen delighted in showing Colton various projects and interests, from the turkey he was slowly taming to a collection of arrowheads he found near the river. November arrived with cold winds and the first hints of winter. The cattle market in town brought ranchers from surrounding areas, and Colton went to sell some of his stock. He got a fair price and found himself with money in his pocket and no pressing work for the afternoon. On impulse, he went to the dry goods store and bought fabric, pale blue calico with tiny white flowers, Caroline's favorite colors. He brought the fabric to Olivia that evening, feeling foolish but determined. I remember Caroline saying you were a good seamstress. I thought maybe you could make something with this, a dress for yourself, or something for Owen. I just did not want it to go to waste. Olivia took the fabric and ran her fingers over it, her expression soft. This is beautiful, Colton. Are you sure? Caroline loved blue. I saw it and thought of her. But I do not need fabric sitting in my house making me sad. Better it gets used for something good. I will make a dress, and I will think of her when I wear it. Thank you. Can I come by tomorrow to help with that fence line you mentioned, the one the cattle keep pushing through? You do not have to do that. I want to. Besides, Owen promised to show me his arrowhead collection, and I'm curious. Olivia smiled, genuine and warm. Then yes, please come by. We would enjoy the company. Colton left feeling lighter than he had in months. He was not healed, not by a long measure, but he was beginning to see that healing was possible. Grief would always be part of him now, a scar on his heart, but it did not have to be the only thing defining him. The barn dance Samuel mentioned approached, and to Colton's surprise, he found himself considering going. Not because he wanted to dance or socialize particularly, but because staying home alone felt more like giving up than healing. Caroline loved dancing. She would drag him to every social event in Tascosa despite his protests. And by the end of the night, he always admitted he had enjoyed himself. She had a way of making everything more fun, more alive. He decided to go, if only to honor her memory by doing something she would have wanted. The night of the dance, Colton cleaned up and put on his best clothes, a white shirt and black vest that Caroline had made for him. He rode into town as the sun set, painting the sky orange and pink. The barn where the dance was held glowed with lantern light, and music spilled out into the evening air. Fiddles and guitars, someone calling out dance steps, laughter and conversation blending together. Colton almost turned back. This was a mistake. He could not do this. Then he saw Olivia and Owen arriving in their wagon. Olivia wore the blue calico dress she had made from the fabric he gave her, and she looked beautiful. Not in the same way Caroline had been beautiful, but in her own right. Her auburn hair was pinned up elegantly, and the dress fit her perfectly, bringing out the green of her eyes. She saw him and waved, and that simple gesture of welcome gave him the courage to dismount and walk over. "You came," she said, pleased. "I hoped you would." "You look lovely. The dress turned out well." "Thank you. Owen helped me pick the style from a pattern book." "Did not you, sweetheart?" Owen nodded enthusiastically. "Ma looks like a princess. Are you going to dance with her, Mr. Lawson?" "Owen!" Olivia's cheeks flushed pink. "What? Pa used to dance with you at these things all the time. I saw the pictures." Colton found himself smiling at the boy's blunt honesty. "Maybe later. I am pretty rusty at dancing." They went inside together, and Colton was immediately greeted by people he had been avoiding for months. To his surprise, no one offered excessive sympathy or pried into his grief. They simply welcomed him back, asked how his ranch was doing, invited him to share coffee or check out a new horse someone was selling. It was normal and easy, and he realized how much he had missed this sense of community. The dancing started, couples moving through reels and square dances with practiced ease. Colton stood on the sidelines with other men, watching and talking about cattle prices and weather predictions for winter. Owen ran off to play with other children, and Olivia was pulled into a dance by one of the older ranchers, a friendly man who had known her and Thomas. Colton watched her dance, graceful and smiling, and felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Not guilt this time, but something warmer, attraction maybe, or the beginnings of it, though the thought made him feel disloyal to Caroline's memory. When the dance ended, Olivia made her way back to him, slightly breathless. "Having fun?" he asked. "I am. It has been a long time since I went to one of these. Thomas and I used to come to every dance." She did not say it sadly, just as a statement of fact. Owen mentioned that. "My son has no filter. I apologize if he made you uncomfortable earlier." "He did not. He is just honest." Colton hesitated, then held out his hand. "Would you dance with me? I cannot promise I will not step on your feet." Olivia's smile lit up her whole face. "I would love to." They moved onto the floor as the band started a waltz. Colton put his hand on Olivia's waist, feeling nervous in a way he had not felt since courting Caroline. But Olivia was a good dancer, and she guided him through the steps with patience and grace. They moved together around the floor, and for those few minutes, Colton felt something other than grief. He felt alive again, present in the moment, aware of the warmth of another person and the simple joy of music and movement. When the song ended, they stayed together for another, and then another. Other people danced around them, but Colton barely noticed. He was focused on Olivia, on the way she looked at him with understanding and kindness, on the way being near her made the world seem less heavy. Eventually they took a break, getting cups of punch and stepping outside for air. The night was cold and clear, stars blazing overhead in the vast Texas sky. "Thank you for the dances," Olivia said. "I have not enjoyed myself this much in over a year." "Neither have I. I almost did not come tonight." "I am glad you did." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Colton spoke. "Can I ask you something? When did you know you were ready to move forward after Thomas died? Was there a moment when everything changed?" Olivia considered the question carefully. "Not one moment, but a gradual realization. I woke up one morning, about 8 months after the accident, and realized I had slept through the whole night without nightmares. Then I caught myself laughing at something Owen said, and did not immediately feel guilty for being happy. Small things that added up over time. I realized I was healing without quite noticing it happening." "Do you feel guilty sometimes about moving on?" "Yes," she admitted. "Sometimes I wonder if I should still be mourning, if moving forward means I did not love him enough. But then I remember what Thomas was like. He had such a generous spirit. He would want me to be happy, to find joy again. Keeping myself locked in grief would not honor him. Living well does. Caroline would say the same. She was always pushing me to take chances, to not let fear hold me back." Colton looked up at the stars. "I think she would be disappointed in how I have been living these past months. She would understand the grief, but yes, I think she would want more for you than just surviving. I want to do better. I am trying. I know you are. And you are doing well, Colton." Coming here tonight took courage. He turned to look at her, this woman who had somehow become important to him over the past weeks. "I could not have done it without your help. You showed me that healing is possible. We helped each other, Olivia said softly. That is what neighbors do. But it felt like more than neighborly concern now, and from the look in Olivia's eyes, she felt it too. The awareness hung between them, fragile and new, neither quite ready to name it, but both conscious of its presence. Owen came running out then, full of stories about the other children, and begging for permission to have another piece of cake. The moment passed, but the connection remained. December arrived with colder weather, and the busy work of preparing for winter. Colton threw himself into tasks, but not with the desperate avoidance of before. Now he worked with purpose, planning for spring, thinking about improvements he wanted to make to the ranch. He realized he was looking forward again, instead of just dwelling in the past. He continued spending time with Olivia and Owen, and the three of them fell into an easy rhythm. Colton would ride over in the afternoons after his main work was done, helping with whatever needed doing around the Harper place. In return, Olivia fed him supper, and they would sit by the fire while Owen did homework, and Colton and Olivia talked about everything and nothing. They discussed books and ranching, childhood memories, and dreams for the future. Olivia had a sharp mind and a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard and made him laugh, something he thought he might never do again. One evening in mid-December, after Owen had gone to bed, Colton and Olivia sat together on the porch despite the cold. The sky was clear, and a million stars shone overhead. Rusty the kitten, now grown into a sleek cat, purred on Colton's lap. I have been thinking, Colton said slowly, about what you said, about living well honoring those we lost. Yes? I think Caroline would approve of how I have been spending my time lately, helping you and Owen, being part of the community again. I think she would be glad I found a friend who understands. I am glad too, Olivia said. You have been good for us as well. Owen looks up to you. He asks about you constantly when you're not around. He is a fine boy. You have done a wonderful job raising him. Thank you. It has not been easy doing it alone. Colton gathered his courage and spoke the thought that had been growing in his mind for weeks. What if you did not have to do it alone? Olivia turned to look at him, her expression carefully neutral. What do you mean? I mean that I have come to care for you both a great deal, more than just neighborly concern. I wake up thinking about seeing you. I find excuses to ride over here. When something good or bad happens, you are the person I want to tell. He took a breath. I am not saying I have stopped loving Caroline. I never will. But I am beginning to think my heart has room for more than just grief. If you might feel the same way, I would like to explore that. Slowly, at whatever pace feels right. Olivia was quiet for a long moment, and Colton's heart pounded. He had overstepped. It was too soon. She still loved Thomas, and he was a fool for thinking otherwise. Then she reached over and took his hand, her fingers warm despite the cold night. I feel the same way, she said softly. I have for weeks now, but I was afraid to say anything. Afraid you would think I was being disrespectful to Caroline's memory, or that I was rushing things. Not rushing, just being honest about what is growing between us. Yes, exactly that. She squeezed his hand. I love Thomas deeply, and I will always carry him in my heart. But I have been so lonely, Colton. Lonely in a way that goes beyond just missing physical presence. I miss having a partner, someone to share the burdens and joys of daily life. Someone who understands me. I understand that. I feel the same. Then yes, I would like to see where this leads, carefully, respectfully, but honestly. They sat together holding hands under the stars, and Colton felt a sense of peace he had not known since that terrible day in September. Grief was still there, would always be there in some form, but it no longer consumed everything. There was room now for hope, for the possibility of happiness again. The winter passed slowly, as Texas winters do. There was cold and occasional ice, but nothing like the brutal snows of the northern states. Colton and Olivia spent increasing amounts of time together, and their relationship deepened naturally. They were careful around Owen, not wanting to confuse or upset the boy, but he seemed to sense the changing dynamic and accepted it with easy grace. Are you courting my ma? Owen asked one January afternoon, while he and Colton were fixing a barn door. Colton considered lying, but decided the boy deserved honesty. I suppose I am. How do you feel about that? Owen hammered a nail thoughtfully before answering. I miss my pa. I will always miss him. But I like you, Mr. Lawson. You are kind and you make Ma smile more than she has in a long time. Pa would want her to be happy. Your father sounds like he was a good man. The best. He taught me to ride and rope and how to treat people right. I wish you could have met him. I wish I could have too. Would you really want to court Ma? Maybe marry her someday? Possibly if we both feel that is right. But I want you to know, Owen, that I would never try to replace your father. No one could do that. But I would do my best to be good to you and your mother, if she would have me. Owen looked at him with serious brown eyes. I think that would be all right. I think Pa would approve. It was as much blessing as Colton could hope for from the boy. They finished the repair work in companionable silence. As winter gave way to early spring, Colton found himself at peace with the idea of moving forward. He still visited Caroline's grave regularly, bringing wildflowers and talking to her about his life. He told her about Olivia and Owen and how they had helped him heal. He told her he would always love her, but that he thought she would approve of where his heart was leading him. The guilt that had consumed him for so many months had faded to a dull ache, manageable and integrated into who he was now. In March, on a clear morning, when wildflowers were just beginning to bloom across the prairie, Colton asked Olivia to marry him. They were riding together out on the range, checking cattle and enjoying the warming weather. Colton had been carrying the ring for 2 weeks, a simple gold band that had been his mother's, waiting for the right moment. Olivia, he said, reining in his horse, can we stop for a minute? She pulled up beside him, curious. Is something wrong? No, everything is right. More right than I thought it could be again. He dismounted and helped her down, then took both her hands in his. I know we have not been courting long by traditional standards, but we both understand that life is precious and uncertain. We both know what it means to lose someone we love, and we both know what we have found together is rare and worth holding on to. Olivia's eyes widened as she realized where this was going. I am not asking you to forget Thomas or pretend he did not exist. I am not asking you to love me the same way you loved him. I am just asking if you might love me in whatever way your heart has room for, and let me love you and Owen with everything I have. Will you marry me, Olivia Harper? He pulled out the ring and held it up, simple gold gleaming in the sunlight. Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks, but she was smiling. Yes. Yes, Colton, I will marry you. I do love you, differently than I loved Thomas, but no less deeply. You have brought light back into my life when I thought I would live in shadow forever. He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her, tender and full of promise. Around them the prairie stretched endless and beautiful, full of possibilities they would explore together. They married in April on a Sunday afternoon, a simple ceremony at the church with the whole town invited. Owen stood beside them as a witness, proud and happy. The gathering was joyful, but also carried an undercurrent of respect for the two people they had lost. Several folks mentioned how Caroline and Thomas would have been pleased to see their loved ones finding happiness again. At the reception afterward, held in the church hall with food and music, Colton and Olivia danced together as husband and wife. He looked down at her face, flushed with happiness and exertion, and felt his heart expand with love and gratitude. I never thought I would feel this way again, he said, happy and hopeful. Neither did I, but here we are. Here we are. They consolidated their 2 properties, deciding to live primarily at Colton's ranch since it was larger and had better grazing land. But they kept the Harper house for overflow storage and as a possible place for Owen when he grew older and wanted his own space. The 3 of them settled into life as a family with surprising ease. Owen called Colton by his first name, not father, which felt appropriate and right. Colton taught the boy more advanced ranching skills, and Owen soaked up the knowledge eagerly. Olivia transformed Colton's house back into a home. She added curtains and rugs, cooked meals that filled the space with wonderful smells, and brought laughter and conversation to rooms that had been silent for too long. She also set up a small sewing business, taking in alterations and making dresses for ladies in town. The extra income helped, but more than that, it gave her purpose and independence. Summer came hot and busy with roundups and cattle drives. Colton worked long days, but always made time for his family in the evenings. They would sit together on the porch after supper, Olivia mending or sewing, Owen reading adventure stories by lamplight, and Colton carving small wooden figures that Owen collected. Rusty the cat sprawled across whoever would hold him, purring contentedly. One warm evening in July, Olivia announced she was pregnant. Colton felt a surge of joy mixed with trepidation. He had wanted children with Caroline, but now that dream would be fulfilled with Olivia instead. It felt both wonderful and complicated. "Are you happy?" Olivia asked, watching his face carefully. "I am. I am also scared. What if something goes wrong? We cannot live in fear of what might happen. We live in the present and trust that we can handle whatever comes." Owen was thrilled at the prospect of a sibling. "I hope it is a brother, so I can teach him how to rope cattle. But a sister would be fine too, I guess." "How generous of you," Olivia said with amusement. The pregnancy progressed normally through the hot summer months. Olivia continued her sewing work, but scaled back as she tired more easily. Colton hired a young cowhand to help with the ranch, a quiet 18-year-old named Ben, who was grateful for steady work and a place to stay. This freed up more of Colton's time to help Olivia and Owen with tasks around the house. In late August, they received word that Caroline's parents, who lived back east in Philadelphia, wanted to visit. They had not been able to afford the trip for the funeral, but now they had saved enough and wanted to see where their daughter had lived and meet the man she had loved. Colton felt anxious about the visit. He had not told them about his remarriage, not out of secrecy, but simply because it never seemed like the right time in letters. Now they would arrive and find him married to another woman, with a baby on the way, barely a year after their daughter's death. Would they feel betrayed? Angry? "We cannot hide our life from them," Olivia said gently when Colton expressed his concerns. "They will either understand or they will not, but living honestly is the only option. I just do not want to hurt them more than they have already been hurt. Their daughter died. Nothing we do or say will change that pain. But perhaps seeing that you have found a way to keep living will bring them some comfort. Parents want their children's loved ones to be happy, even after they are gone." Caroline's parents, Margaret and Robert, arrived in early September on the stage from Fort Worth. They were a genteel couple in their late 50s, dressed in somber Eastern fashion that looked out of place in dusty Tascosa. Colton met them at the stage office with his heart pounding. Margaret saw him and burst into tears. "Colton, oh my dear boy." He embraced her, feeling her grief and his own rising up together. Robert shook his hand firmly, his own eyes red-rimmed behind spectacles. "Thank you for letting us come," Robert said. "We needed to see this place, to understand where Caroline spent her final years. You are always welcome, always." Colton took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something before we go to the ranch. I have remarried. Her name is Olivia. She is a widow with a young son, and she is expecting our child in February. I know this might be difficult to hear." Margaret and Robert exchanged a long look. Then Margaret spoke. "Caroline would not have wanted you to spend your life alone. We knew her heart, Colton. She loved you so much that she would want you to find happiness again, even though it grieves us that she could not be that happiness for you." "I will always love her," Colton said, his voice thick. "Always. We know, and we would like to meet this woman who has helped you heal." The visit went better than Colton dared hope. Margaret and Robert stayed at the ranch for 2 weeks, and they took to Olivia immediately. She treated them with kindness and respect, never trying to replace their daughter, but honoring her memory in the way she cared for Caroline's home and husband. They told stories about Caroline's childhood, bringing her to life in ways Colton had never heard. Olivia listened with genuine interest and shared her own stories about Thomas, showing that love and loss were not competitions, but different chapters in the long book of life. Owen charmed them completely with his enthusiasm and good manners. They seemed comforted to know that Colton had not just replaced Caroline, but had built a new family that would honor her memory while creating new memories of its own. Before they left, Margaret gave Olivia a locket that had belonged to Caroline. "I want you to have this. Inside is a small portrait of her. She should be part of this home and this family, not locked away in a drawer. You strike me as the kind of woman who can hold space for those who came before, while still living fully in the present." Olivia accepted the locket with tears in her eyes. "I will treasure it, and I will make sure any children we have know about Caroline and the love she and Colton shared. That is all we can ask. Thank you for taking care of him. Thank you for bringing him back to life." After they left on the stage back east, Colton felt a sense of closure he had not known he needed. Caroline's parents had blessed his new life, and that permission, however much he had not realized he was seeking it, freed something in his heart. Autumn arrived with cooler temperatures and the busy work of preparing for winter again. Owen started back at school, excited to tell his friends about the coming baby. Olivia grew rounder and glowed with health, though she grumbled about not being able to see her own feet anymore. Colton found himself constantly worried about her, checking that she was not overexerting herself, making sure she had everything she needed. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she told him one October afternoon when he tried to prevent her from hanging laundry. "I did this with Owen. I know what I am doing." "I know, but I cannot help worrying. If something happened to you—" She cupped his face in her hands. "Nothing will happen to me. Women have babies every day. I am strong and healthy, and we have a good midwife already lined up. You have to trust that everything will be all right." "I do trust. I am just scared." "That is normal. Thomas was terrified when I was pregnant with Owen. He barely slept the last month, jumping at every sound thinking it was time. But everything went fine, and it will this time too." Colton pulled her close, feeling the swell of their child between them. "I love you so much, both of you, all of you," he added, remembering Owen. "We love you too. Now let me hang this laundry, or it will never get done." The months passed. Winter came gentle that year, with cold but no terrible storms. Christmas was a joyful celebration, Owen ripping through presents with childish enthusiasm, while Colton and Olivia exchanged meaningful looks over his head, both thinking of absent loved ones, but also grateful for the family they had now. In mid-February, 2 days before Olivia's due date, the pains started. Colton sent Ben racing to town to fetch the midwife while he tried not to panic. Owen, who had been sent to stay with neighbors, showed up at the house anyway, worried about his mother. "I want to be here," he said firmly. "Pa was here when I was born, or so Ma says. I should be here for my brother or sister." Colton did not have the heart to send him away. "All right, but you stay downstairs with me. This is women's work." They waited together as the afternoon turned to evening. The midwife, a capable woman named Ruth, who had delivered half the babies in Tascosa, worked upstairs with her assistant. Occasionally they heard sounds from above that made Colton's blood run cold, but Ruth came down periodically to assure them everything was progressing normally. "She is strong and doing well," Ruth said around midnight. "It should not be much longer now." At 2 a.m. on February 18th, 1884, a baby's cry pierced the quiet house. Colton stood so fast he knocked over his chair, his heart in his throat. Owen grabbed his hand and squeezed. Ruth appeared at the top of the stairs, smiling. "You have a healthy son, and your wife is doing just fine. Come meet your boy." They climbed the stairs together, Colton's legs shaking. In the bedroom, Olivia lay propped on pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up as they entered and smiled. "Come see him. He is perfect." Colton approached the bed as if walking through a dream. Olivia pulled back the blanket to reveal a red, wrinkled face, eyes scrunched closed, a rosebud mouth working silently. The baby had a shock of dark hair and perfect tiny fingers that curled and uncurled. "He looks like you," Olivia whispered. Colton could not speak. He reached out and touched one small hand, and the baby's fingers wrapped around his thumb with surprising strength. In that instant, he fell completely in love. This was his son, a piece of him and Olivia combined, a symbol of their love and their healing. "What should we name him?" Olivia asked. They had discussed names but never settled on one. Now, Colton knew what felt right. "I would like to call him Thomas Robert. Thomas for your first husband who you loved, and Robert for Caroline's father, honoring those who came before while celebrating this new life." Tears streamed down Olivia's face. "That is perfect. Thomas Robert Lawson." Owen peered at his new brother with fascination. "He is so tiny. Can I hold him?" "Carefully," Olivia said, and showed him how to support the baby's head. Owen held his brother with exaggerated care, his face serious with concentration. "Hi, Tommy. I am your big brother. I am going to teach you everything I know." "Lord help him then," Colton murmured, and Olivia laughed weakly. They spent the rest of the night as a family, exhausted and overjoyed, watching the baby sleep and marveling at the miracle of new life. When dawn broke over the Texas plains, painting the sky pink and gold, Colton stood at the window holding his son and felt complete in a way he thought he never would again. The months after Thomas's birth were busy and exhausting and wonderful. The baby was healthy and loud, demanding attention at all hours. Olivia recovered quickly and threw herself into motherhood with practiced skill, though she was tired most days. Owen helped more than expected, eager to be involved with his brother. Colton walked around in a daze of sleeplessness and happiness, constantly amazed that this was his life now. Spring brought the busy season again, but Colton was better prepared this year with Ben to help, and a better understanding of how to balance work and family. He made sure to spend evenings with Olivia and the children, not wanting to miss moments he could never get back. In May, they held a small celebration for Owen's 12th birthday. Friends from town came out to the ranch, and they had a picnic with games and cake. Watching Owen race around with other children, Thomas sleeping peacefully in Olivia's arms, Colton felt a surge of gratitude so intense it almost brought him to his knees. "What is wrong?" Olivia asked, noticing his expression. "Nothing is wrong. Everything is so right it scares me sometimes. 2 years ago, I wanted to die. I could not imagine ever feeling happy again. And now I have this full, beautiful life, and I am terrified something will take it away. We cannot live in fear of loss. That is no way to honor the gift we have been given." She shifted Thomas to one arm and took Colton's hand with the other. "We live fully and love deeply, and trust that whatever comes, we will face it together. When did you become so wise?" "I have always been wise. You just finally noticed." He laughed and kissed her, tasting lemonade and cake. "I notice everything about you, how beautiful you are when you are annoyed with me, how you sing to Thomas when you think no one is listening, how you still get sad sometimes looking at Thomas's picture. But it is a gentle sadness now, not the crushing grief from before. I do still miss him, I always will, but I have room in my heart for both the past and the present. Love is not a finite resource that gets used up. It grows and changes and makes space for new people without diminishing what came before. I know, I feel the same about Caroline. She is part of who I am, but so are you and the boys. We are all woven together in ways that feel right and good." That summer, they made improvements to the ranch, building a new barn and expanding the pastures. The cattle business was good, and they had saved enough to think about hiring another hand and maybe buying more land. Owen talked constantly about becoming a rancher like Colton, and while they encouraged him to get a full education first, it was clear the boy had the land in his blood. Thomas grew from a tiny newborn into a chubby, smiley baby who delighted everyone who met him. He had his mother's green eyes and his father's dark hair, and a disposition so cheerful it seemed impossible he ever cried, though Colton's sleepless nights proved otherwise. In August, Caroline's parents wrote saying they would like to visit again, this time meeting their grandson by proxy. Colton wrote back immediately inviting them for September, and they arrived on a golden autumn day when the prairie grasses waved in the breeze and the sky stretched endless overhead. Margaret cried when she saw Thomas, but they were happy tears. "He has Caroline's nose. See, right there, the same little curve." "I thought that too," Olivia said softly, holding the baby so Margaret could see better. "May I hold him?" "Of course." Margaret took her grandson and rocked him gently, singing a lullaby Colton recognized from when Caroline used to sing it. "Hello, little one. Your father loved my daughter very much, and she loved him. You come from that love, in a way, because without Caroline your father might never have come to Texas, might never have built this ranch, might never have been here to meet your mother. Life connects in strange and beautiful ways." Robert stood beside his wife, one hand on her shoulder, looking down at the baby with wonder. "He is perfect. Caroline would have been so happy to know Colton has a son." They stayed for a month that time, and it was even better than the first visit. Margaret taught Olivia recipes Caroline had loved, and Robert spent hours with Owen teaching him about bookkeeping and mathematics for ranching. They told more stories about Caroline, and Colton shared his memories, no longer painful to speak about, but precious and important. They visited Caroline's grave together, bringing flowers, and stood in silence as the wind whispered through the grass. "Thank you for keeping her memory alive," Margaret said as they walked back to the wagon, "for not pretending she never existed just because you have moved on." "She is part of our family," Colton said. "She always will be. Any children we have will know about her, about how much she meant to me and how her love helped shape the man I became. That is all a parent can hope for, that their child's life mattered and is remembered." After they left, Colton felt even more settled in his life. The guilt that had plagued him for so long was finally truly gone, replaced by acceptance and peace. He had loved Caroline deeply, and her death was a tragedy, But it was not his fault. Random violence took her, and he could not have prevented it any more than Olivia could have prevented Thomas's horse from spooking. They had both learned to live with loss while still embracing life, and that balance was the greatest honor they could give to those they had lost. The years passed in the way years do, marked by seasons and milestones. Owen grew into a tall, capable young man who took on more responsibilities at the ranch. Thomas learned to walk and talk and get into everything, a bundle of energy who kept them all on their toes. They had another child in 1886, a daughter they named Caroline Margaret, honoring both women who had shaped their lives. The little girl had her namesake's bright spirit and brought new joy to their growing family. Colton and Olivia's marriage deepened with time, growing from the careful hope of two wounded people into a strong partnership built on love, respect, and shared purpose. They had their disagreements like any couple, but they worked through them with communication and compromise. They supported each other through hard times, including a drought in '87 that tested every rancher in the region, and celebrated the good times together. Owen eventually went to college in Dallas, studying agriculture and business so he could come back and help run the ranch more efficiently. He returned at 22 with a degree and a fiancée, a smart young woman named Sarah, who fit into the family immediately. They married in the spring of 1893 and built a house on the other section of the property, close enough to help, but far enough for independence. Thomas and Caroline grew up healthy and happy, running wild across the prairie and learning everything they could about ranching from their father and older brother. Thomas had a gift for working with horses, while Caroline showed unexpected talent for the business side of things, keeping accounts with the same precision her grandmother Margaret had taught Olivia years before. By the turn of the century, the Lawson Ranch was one of the most successful operations in the area. They had expanded their holdings and employed several hands year-round. Owen and Sarah had given them 2 grandchildren, with another on the way. Thomas talked about training horses professionally, and Caroline had set her sights on becoming one of the first female ranch owners in Texas. On a warm evening in May 1900, Colton and Olivia sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. They were both in their 50s now, weathered by years of hard work and Texas sun, but still strong and active. Colton's hair had gone gray at the temples, and Olivia had laugh lines around her eyes, but they moved together with the ease of long partnership. "Do you remember the barn dance?" Olivia asked. "When we danced together for the first time?" "Of course! I was terrified I would step on your feet." "You did step on my feet. Twice. I improved, though." "You did." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I was so lonely that night, before you asked me to dance. I had convinced myself I would never feel that connection with anyone again, that my life would just be about raising Owen and getting by. Then you held out your hand, and everything changed. You changed my life, too. You showed me that healing was possible, that love could grow even in the shadow of grief. You gave me back my future. We gave each other our futures. That is what love does. It multiplies possibility instead of dividing it." Colton kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "I love you, Olivia Lawson, more than I thought it was possible to love someone." "I love you too, Colton. Always and forever." They sat together as the stars began to appear, one by one, in the darkening sky. Somewhere inside the house, their daughter was practicing piano, the notes floating out through the open windows. In the distance, they could see lights from Owen and Sarah's house, and beyond that, the vast prairie stretching to the horizon. Colton thought about Caroline and Thomas, those first loves that shaped them into the people who could appreciate what they had now. He thought about the pain and the healing, the guilt and the forgiveness, the long journey from darkness back into light. He thought about second chances and the courage it took to accept them. "We have built a good life," he said. "Despite everything, we built something beautiful. We did, and we are not done yet. There are still sunrises to see and grandchildren to spoil and new dreams to dream." "What dreams do you have left?" Olivia smiled. "I want to see Thomas train his first championship horse. I want to watch Caroline open her own ranch. I want to dance with you at Owen's children's weddings. I want to grow old together right here on this porch, watching the world change while our love stays constant." "Those sound like good dreams. I share them all." They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them. Later, they would go inside to their warm home, filled with family and love. They would check on their children, bank the fire, and climb into bed together as they had for nearly 20 years. They would sleep peacefully, knowing that tomorrow would bring its own joys and challenges, and they would face them together as they always had. The cowboy who lost his wife and blamed himself had learned to forgive and love again. The widow who knew that pain all too well had found healing in helping another wounded soul. Together, they had built a life that honored the past while embracing the future, proving that grief and joy could coexist, that love was strong enough to bloom even in the hardest soil, and that second chances were real and precious and worth every moment of courage it took to accept them. As the stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, the ranch settled into the quiet rhythms of night. The cattle lowed softly in the distance, horses shifted in their stalls, and somewhere an owl called out to the darkness. Inside the house, Thomas Lawson's family slept soundly, wrapped in the security of love, hard-won and carefully tended. And on the porch, two people who had walked through fire and emerged stronger sat hand in hand, grateful for every moment, for every breath, for every tomorrow they would face together. The Wild West was still wild in many ways, still harsh and demanding and unforgiving. But it was also beautiful and full of possibility, and for those brave enough to open their hearts after loss, it offered second chances and new beginnings. Colton and Olivia had claimed their second chance and built a love that would last the rest of their lives, a testament to the resilience of the human heart and the power of compassion to heal even the deepest wounds. Their story was not one of forgetting the past, but of integrating it into a richer, more complex present. Caroline and Thomas were part of their family forever, present in stories and memories, in the values they instilled, in the very names of their children. Loss had shaped them both, but it had not destroyed them. Instead, it had taught them what truly mattered: love, family, kindness, and the courage to keep living even when life felt impossibly hard. As the years continued to unfold, their love story would become legend in Tascosa, the tale of two people who found each other in grief and built joy together. Young couples would look to them as an example of what marriage could be when built on mutual respect, shared pain, and hard-won wisdom. Their children and grandchildren would carry forward the lessons they learned, spreading ripples of love and resilience through future generations. And on quiet evenings for decades to come, you could find them there on that porch, watching the sun set over the Texas plains, hands clasped together, hearts full of gratitude for the life they built from the ashes of their losses. Two souls who knew profound sorrow had discovered even more profound joy, and in doing so had proved that love never truly ends, but transforms, grows, and finds new ways to flourish under the vast western sky.